Welcome back to Just Chattin', and this is the series of videos we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. So those of you who don't follow the weekend videos may have noticed there's a change in the camera. Yes, my camera died over the weekend, and so this will be like my third day in a row filming with a different camera. Hopefully the replacement camera will be in before we get together next week. So I'm just going to have to beg your indulgence here. For the Audie fans, Audie is sleeping in the front window again. He fell asleep watching the neighbor's snow melt. We have had a very cold week this past week. We had about 3 days when the temperature was below 0, and that's Fahrenheit. Audie was housebound for that period, not because I refused to let him out, but he refused to go out, because, yeah, I guess he's not as stupid as I always say he is. And he was out this morning snooping on the neighbors. He needed to make sure that his snow is better than their snow, which it isn't, because this property is one of the first in the neighborhood to clear out when we get snow. It's because of the schoolhouse. This giant brick building is a massive heat sink. So yes, we thaw out first. I have no idea how heartbroken he must be right now. I can only imagine. Yellow for Catherine, for Lex's mom, for everyone coping with cancer. We are sending our very, very best wishes your way. Now, we're going to get into the video. This is the final third of our look at the Vanity Fair article. As I've mentioned before, we're going to take a look at the entire article because everyone is talking about it. It's not easy to get your hands on it, and I think most of our community would at least benefit to some extent from knowing exactly what is in the article rather than hearing third and fourth hand synthesis of this information. So when we come back, we will get started. Okay, so we're just going to plunge right into it. This is the article. It is the final third of the article, but I am going to break it up for a little bit of commentary in between. So here you go.
The Netflix docuseries Harry and Meghan litigates in painstaking detail Harry's and Meghan's mental health declines as she was bullied at the very least in sight of, and by many accounts at the behest of, an imperialist establishment. Yet this doesn't seem to sour them to the idea of participating in a hereditary bloodline. In the doc, Harry says that during their last week as working senior royals, the couple, ruining the circumstances of their exit, kept telling each other, "We would have carried on doing this for the rest of our lives." When Charles ascended the throne after Elizabeth's death, the couple's children became Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. Some people familiar with the production of Archetypes and Harry's book tour said they were instructed to address the couple as Sir or Ma'am, though the request was dropped in one instance after the person pushed back. Other people say they were encouraged by Harry and Meghan to call them by their first names. I think ultimately it's cachet, and sets them apart as different and special, the source familiar with the couple says. In the U.S., success, money, fame, all of that stuff exists out here, but a blood title? It's few and far between. Many members of Meghan's current inner circle, which includes Kaling, Figueres' wife, socialite Delphina Blackier, Tracy Robbins, the fashion designer and wife of Paramount Global co-CEO Brian Robbins, and parenting influencer and activist McKee Zyphon, are basically living by the rules of American aristocracy, according to Louis. They stay behind the scenes, wield their power quietly, and look down on people who are very public, too thirsty. On the other hand, all of the aforementioned are slated to appear on With Love, Meghan. A Black Studies scholar, who is also an African-American woman, noted the way racism is discussed in Harry and Meghan. As the one-off actions of Princess Michael of Kent wearing a blackamoor brooch to a brunch where Meghan was present, or the distant colonialism that still furnishes the duchies of Cornwall and Lancaster and the jewels in the family's tiaras, or Harry saying that the royal family merely had unconscious bias. It's a very common discursive move, the scholar says, locating racism in individual bad actors or locating it in the past. Queen Elizabeth becomes a kindly grandmother. She's in the back of a car or her carriage under a blanket. There's that story, which is really kind of sweet, that Meghan tells in the documentary, but it can't connect that with the larger ideology of England, and thereby Queen Elizabeth, being like, we are the natural rulers of the world, and that includes the segregation of people of color. The cultural critic says this framing makes it so Meghan and Harry can tell the story of being victims of the system, but it's all about them being disenfranchised from whiteness and white privilege. The couple repeatedly expressed frustration in Harry and Meghan that Meghan wasn't tapped as an asset for upholding the Crown's international interests in an era when Prince William was tasked with expressing profound sorrow for the appalling atrocity of slavery during a tour to Jamaica. As historian David Olusoga says in the docuseries, part of what makes the inability of the palace to defend Meghan an even bigger disaster is that the center of the argument for the monarchy in this country is the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is 2.5 billion, mainly black and brown people. Here was a woman who looked like most of the people in the Commonwealth. Harry speaks shortly after and says the palace and its denizens have already missed an enormous opportunity with my wife and how far that would go globally. The source familiar with the couple says it's important to note that Harry isn't an anti-monarchist. He just didn't like the way things were run within the institution, he says. His issues are about people and behaviors, not tradition. The source, who is also a person of color, defends Meghan's right to want a piece of the empire for herself. If I was in the same position and I was treated the way I was by the institution, it wouldn't stop me from still feeling that that title is mine and deserved, they say. If anything, it would feel like you're giving in to the pressure to exclude you in the first place, so actually it would probably make me want it even more. Damn well I'm going to slap it on my kids' names too.
So the information we just sort of plowed through in this article is really interesting. From a scholarly point of view, I would have to say this is the most interesting portion of the whole article, because Vanity Fair has apparently interviewed a Black Studies scholar who has provided her assessment of the issues of racism within the royal family, and I'm guessing the British political structure in general. The problem I am going to give you my take on this information, but I have to throw out this caveat. The problem I have going into this is the scholar is not named, and the quotes definitely seem to be taken from a larger body of work, an interview, a paper, something like this. But without knowing who the scholar is, I can't actually get my hands on what her original context was, and I just have to guess at where she's going with this. However, I'm going to take it from the point of view of the Vanity Fair article and the information they focused on. So we have a scholar who is essentially saying we don't need to pick apart individual instances of racism to understand that the system is broken, that the British monarchy has been built on exploitation, and that is true. No one can deny that. There is no such thing as a monarchy that was not built on exploitation of somebody. In the case of the British monarchy, it was built on the exploitation of the British people, who were, at the inception of the monarchy, I am going to say, essentially 100% white Anglo-Saxon people. There you go. So yes, certainly there was that level of exploitation. When we move forward more into the modern era, the colonial era, we do start to see the exploitation of other peoples from other countries. In the Victorian era in particular, and remember, those were the days in which the sun never set on the British Empire. Minority races were exploited. However, we cannot lose sight of this. Black African people were not the majority of the people who were exploited. The majority of the people who were exploited were brown South Asians. And in a way, you have to be mindful that when you are getting your information on racial exploitation from a person whose field of specialization is Black studies, you're probably not going to get a very strong Asian perspective coming through. Just saying. Nevertheless, I think overall, what she's trying to say is the system is broken. You don't just pick it apart and say, well, this person is bad. For example, Princess Michael of Kent. Now, we all know, I hope we all know, that yes, she is bad. This is a racist. This is a woman who is arguably the complete product in every possible sense of the word of Nazi Germany. It's where she was born. And by the way, it was Nazi Germany when she was born there. This is where her family was from. And yes, she's still carrying a lot of that crap into the 21st century with her. But is it fair to blame the entire royal establishment for the actions of someone who is viewed by them, frankly, as an embarrassment and has been for 50 years? She's sort of the doddering old auntie that you have to put up with, but nobody's really looking forward to seeing her, on Thanksgiving. Yeah, sure, we've got one example, but then we pull the Queen out and say, oh, but she's not a racist, which doesn't hang with Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet's complete narrative. Remember, this is Empire 2.0, and the Queen was the standard bearer for Empire 2.0. So, no, they're trying to pick and choose because they are playing to the public. They are playing the race card, and they are certainly not doing anything to distance themselves from this institution, which is arguably broken when it comes to race relations, and certainly has been at times in its past. I don't think anyone would deny that. And meanwhile, Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet are clinging to their titles, which came from this, what they are basically labeling as a white supremacist organization, clinging to the titles. But as the sociologist is saying, what they are doing is they are bemoaning the loss of their white privilege, of the benefits they got as members of the royal family, which have now come to an end. The Sock Puppet then goes on to ramble on about how they should have used Nutmeg because she would have played so well for the Commonwealth. And I think this is part of a bigger complaint they have, which is that when Nutmeg married into the royal family, nobody was willing to just step aside, dangle the keys to Buckingham Palace and say, here you go, you take over, you get to be queen now. Which frankly, I think is exactly what she was expecting and the Sock Puppet was hoping for. And when that didn't happen, oh my goodness, were they ever hard done by.
And if you are not queen, my dear, have I done you wrong?
And I think the Vanity Fair article, despite the fact that they took a rather circuitous route, is making that abundantly clear. So, let's go on to the article.
Natalie Portman, Jeff Bridges, John Carradine, Kirk and Michael Douglas, Jonathan Winters, Gwyneth Paltrow, Adam Levine, Jimmy Connors, T.C. Boyle, Leonardo DiCaprio, Neil Young and Daryl Hannah, Michael Keaton, and of course Oprah are among the many celebrities who have peacefully coexisted with other locals in Montecito, an unincorporated part of Santa Barbara County. When a Montecitans labradoodle ran up to a child and licked their ice cream, the kid's father, Kardashian affiliate Scott Disick, ran up to the pet owner with concern, not because he was upset that the cone was ruined, but to reassure the person that the ice cream was vegan and wouldn't upset the dog's stomach. Katy Perry has, per usual, had some legal real estate issues, and Ellen DeGeneres has become unpopular for her immaculate, usually off-market flips that have supposedly driven house prices up. I think everyone, including the A-list celebs, would prefer that it's not on the map like it is, the Montecitan says. It's a place where no one would ever bother a famous person beyond saying hello at the coffee shop, as they would to anyone else. One resident says Montecito's defining characteristics are quiet and neighborliness. The prince and the starlet, as the Montecitan calls her, have become local villains, according to several people who spoke with VF. They attribute the increase in housing prices to them as much as DeGeneres, and point to out-of-towners coming in, driving too fast, and taking up all the street parking by local trails like the one Meghan was photographed hiking on while Harry was in the UK for Charles's coronation. You can't just walk into Lucky's for dinner anymore. While the Montecitan says neither he nor his friends have ever met the couple, two others mentioned Harry biking in town, they popped up in the video for DeGeneres and Portia de Rossi's vow renewal, and the Montecitan saw photos of Harry playing polo at a nearby field, which will also be featured in Harry's Netflix docuseries. Meghan's Netflix project was filmed at a house near theirs. American Riviera Orchard, which on Instagram has a logo styled with a royal-looking crest and written in Meghan's perfect calligraphy and is known internally as Aro, is located in Montecito. Though an 1898 book published by the Southern Pacific Company Rail Line states the Montecito is known as the American Riviera, today that honor is understood to belong to Santa Barbara. No one Vanity Fair spoke with had ever heard Montecito referred to by the name. It's such a kind of hucksterism, one resident says. It's just finding every way she can to monetize something. And in doing so, bringing more attention to the place where the Sussexes say they want to be left alone. I still think they're the most entitled, disingenuous people on the planet, the Montecitan says. They moved away from England to get away from the scrutiny of the press, and all they do is try and get in the press in the United States. Louis says the most common criticism she hears about Meghan, though she notes it's true of Harry as well, is you can't cherry-pick the good parts and leave out the bad parts of fame. However, she points out, all celebrities do this. Don't take photos of me. Oh, but here, let me step out conveniently and get papped. Only give me good reviews of my movie or my album, and if you don't like my music, I'm going to post on Instagram that you're so shitty as a reviewer. Whether American Riviera Orchard will be well received, or received at all, at least in name, remains to be seen. On August 31st, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office rejected the trademark application. Registration is refused because the applied-for mark is primarily geographically descriptive, the response read. In other words, you can't claim a place. Tell that to Queen Victoria. The same day, according to the New York Post, the office reportedly received a complaint from storied pair purveyor Harry and David regarding the similarity in name to its Royal Riviera line. As far as the substance of the brand, Louis says Meghan's first lifestyle effort, the TIG, was popular in Louis' circle in Toronto while Meghan was filming Suits there. However, American Riviera Orchard to me is giving 2014. It's not giving 2024, she says. Fame arrests you at the moment it arrives. And I wonder if that is your health and wellness lifestyle version of that, where she had to suspend the TIG and quit it the moment that she became Harry's girlfriend, then fiancée, and then his wife. American Riviera Orchard is maybe picking up from where the TIG left off. The source familiar with the couple says, I think there's one thing that no one could take away from Meghan is how hard she works, how much effort goes into everything that she does. Ultimately, that's all she needs. And I think that's why American Riviera Orchard probably will be a massive success. Even if in 2 years' time it doesn't exist anymore and she's on to the next, it will have that moment. There will be no way that you can say that it wasn't successful.
So the section we just finished reading talks about the people of Montecito, the Montecito residents, many of whom have been there for a very long period of time. These are primarily affluent people who have gone to Montecito, and for those of you who are unaware, it is about 100 miles from Los Angeles. Ordinarily, well, I'm from New England, 100 miles puts you in another state, but by California standards, it kind of makes it a suburb of Los Angeles because these people have sprawling cities. They probably went there to get away from the hustle and bustle of LA. And they certainly are not happy with the circus that Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet brought with them. I've mentioned this before. There are people who do not even believe that Nutmeg and the Sock Puppet actually live in Montecito, that whole thing is a sham. They make a good argument, and I'm not going to dispute that because, frankly, I can't. There's nothing I can put forward that tears down the arguments of the people who say, yeah, maybe they don't live there after all. But whatever their relationship with Montecito is, they certainly brought a great deal of unwanted publicity to the area. And I think that Vanity Fair is painting a picture that really mirrors South Park's episode about, the Prince and Princess of Canada and their worldwide privacy tour when they move in to the little tiny South Park community and bring nothing but chaos, noise, clicking photos all night long, Lord only knows what. They really did paint the kind of picture of what it would be like to live with two wildly egocentric and publicity crazy individuals in your midst. And yeah, I gotta say, I walk away feeling very sorry for the people of Montecito. So let's go finish the last of the article and close this off.
A few years ago, a rumor began circulating around the book world about another prospective project for Meghan. The story, which a person with knowledge confirms the broad details of, was that Meghan's team had a conversation with a publishing house to gauge interest in the idea for a potential book. The concept, for which there was no written or formal proposal, was post-divorce. Not a general book on life after marital dissolution or one about Meghan's past experience. She was married to producer Trevor Engelson from 2011 to 2014. This book, this notion of a book really, might center on a post-Harry divorce. Not that there was actually one in the works, just if this a priori divorce ever came to be, would this publisher theoretically be interested in a book that took place in its aftermath? Another source with knowledge says, if that's true to any degree, she would have been approached and not vice versa. No offer was ever made, and no manuscript was produced. After all, there was no divorce. The source familiar with the couple says Meghan's metabolism for campaigns that she can move on from, archetypes, the ephemeral 40 by 40 mentorship program, the forthcoming lifestyle line and show, the wisp of a possible book about a divorce that might never happen, are part of why she's better suited to celebrity outside the palace. The royals don't work like that, the source says. How many years has Kate been talking about early childhood development? Like 11 now? 12? We still haven't really seen anything. Princess Catherine launched Shaping Up, a campaign focused on increasing public understanding of the crucial importance of the first 5 years of a child's life. In that time, Meghan has gone from star of a syndicated cable series to paradigm-changing princess to her husband's conduit out of royal life to the founder of a hybrid charity Hollywood startup. She has earned as much faith in her own force of will as a sovereign might have from believing that they were anointed by God to lead. As for what she'll do with that power, look at what it means for her to make the world a better place, which she and Harry genuinely seem to want to do. Jamila Jamil, Chrissy Teigen, and Omid Scobie, the author of Finding Freedom, about Harry and Meghan's time in and departure from royal life, and Endgame, about the ensuing years within the Windsor dynasty, have all publicly discussed Meghan unexpectedly reaching out during difficult times in their lives and offering solace, even though they weren't close. Louis sees it as something Meghan took from her royal years, just as Harry has taken his impeccable manners and the ability to patronize the fuck out of a charity. That's what they do, Louis says. They bless you with their royalness, and that's the gift. It's not like Princess Diana was ever best friends with all the people that she visited in the hospital. I think that they don't know what change the world means, says the person who worked in media projects. They want to be people who are looked at as people who want to change the world. Maybe that's why Meghan has continued, on Nick News, in the TIG, on panels, on Archetypes, in Columbia in August, to bring up the story of writing a letter to Procter & Gamble about a sexist soap ad, taking credit for them changing the spot so that it no longer suggested women should be the ones doing dishes. Procter & Gamble declined many requests from VF to confirm that Meghan was the impetus for the switch, and in 2021, the company partnered with Archwell with the goal of elevating the voices of adolescent girls to ensure their point of view and lived experience is heard at the tables where decisions are made. Whether or not Meghan's letter is what prompted the change, the fact that more than 30 years later she continues to speak up about having spoken up suggests it's the kind of mission she aspires to. Marie, who has worked with many celebrities, says of the Sussexes' aspirations, "I think it's actually better than where most people start out." To point out the modesty of that world bettering feels like contributing to the essential problem of Harry and Meghan. No matter what they do, they just can't win. If, I guess, you don't count the overwhelming portion of their beautiful lives that exists outside of Daily Mail headlines and blog comment sections. If Harry's burden is the soft oppression of no expectations, Meghan's might be the opposite, the betrayal of not living up to an unachievable ideal. I think the whole world was waiting for her to be that person, and then she never jumped, the source who worked in media says. Diana walked amongst landmines. Meghan couldn't even say the word slut. This article was read by Julia Whalen.
So the article ends on just a real bombshell. And that is the allegations that Nutmeg sent some of her lackeys off to publishing companies to shop around for a book deal, the tell-all story of her divorce from the sock puppet and her post-divorce life. Well, of course, this is all rumor at this point. No one is saying Nutmeg personally did this, but then again, that's not how she operates. Remember the famous 5 friends. She sends other people off to do her dirty work in the hopes that she will maintain some semblance of plausible deniability. And, of course, they're still married, she and the sock puppet, meaning that obviously there were no takers. She did not get the book deal she was hoping for. But did she do it? Has she been shopping around? Oh, I have no doubt. I have absolutely no doubt. Will the divorce be coming? Well, who knows? Maybe if somebody offers her a good enough book deal, yeah, I'd say the chances are pretty high. But that is where the story ends in terms of Vanity Fair. So let me just say there were a couple of things I did want to follow up on, and these were sort of throwaway bits in this article. And, it has spanned 3 videos because this is a long article. Things that I think were just glossed over that we should probably take another look at. So let's start with the overall picture. The overall picture they paint of Nutmeg and the sock puppet is of a very, very ambitious woman who wants what she wants and will not be satisfied until she gets it. A woman who is absolutely devoid of any basic human feeling for the people who work for her, for anyone around her. It is the Mimi show for her. And her life partner, a hapless dullard who is just following along in her shadow, who is probably reasonably delusional. I think the article does paint him as not just very stupid, but stupid and delusional, which obviously is a very dangerous combination. And I think it's pretty clear we know who is driving their bus, because it's certainly not the sock puppet. So that overall picture comes out, but it is punctuated by things like, they're so hot for each other. It's like, good Lord. And whenever I come across that, I really stop and pull back and say, don't people realize how extremely aggressive and assaultive public displays of affection are for the people who are forced to witness it? This is, well, as I say, it's an act of aggression. We do not customarily spill our intimate lives out for the general public.
Kiss me.
What?
Public displays of affection make people very uncomfortable.
Yes, they do.
We do not cram our tongues down our partner's throats in, touching distance of other people. That's just not how modern society works. When someone does that, especially when they do it knowing that people are going to be made uncomfortable by this, and this is just part of common wisdom. We know people are made uncomfortable. When they do this, they are actually just, in effect, saying to the people around them, I don't care what you think. I don't care if this is unpleasant or uncomfortable for you. I do not care if I am spitting all over your personal, religious, moral, social, whatever beliefs and values. I don't care that I could go home and do this in the privacy of my own bedroom, but I am going to make you a participant in my spectacle. It is an attack. Make no mistake about it. So when people say, oh, look, they're so hot for each other, well, yeah, first of all, I consider it very performative. I consider it also very aggressive. But I also want to say to those people, do you understand there's a difference between love and sex? And all they are doing is spilling sex. They are not spilling true love. They are not spilling happiness. They are not spilling contentment. They are just subjecting the rest of us to their sex lives. And we are, in fact, forced to become voyeurs to their exhibitionism. Ew. So I did want to pick up on that. I am also very glad that even though it was a convoluted journey, they did start to pick apart this whole racist British royal family thing and start to look at the ways in which the sock puppet and Nutmeg both use this hypocritically. On one hand, they say that Nutmeg was so hard done by because, they victimized her for her race, and then they say, well, they should have exploited her for her race instead. what? Can you even follow that line of reasoning? Because to tell you the truth, I can't. But then again, it's the sock puppet's reasoning, so why would I expect to? So those were a couple of things that I'm glad they threw out there. I am also glad that we now have enough stories from enough employees so that no one is left in any doubt about what kind of person Meghan Markle is, because we see it in her dealings with her staff. The amount of love and consideration you show to people who are higher up in the pecking order than you are says nothing. It's the amount of compassion and consideration you show to the people who are below you on the pecking order that tells the whole story. And Vanity Fair did a good job of that, I think. So I'm looking forward to your comments. I don't want to go on any further because this is already, I think, a little over our allotted time. So we're going to take a look at a quick slideshow. I'm going to find a short one for you on the way out. I hope to see you all next week. I am absolutely looking forward to your take on this article now that you've had the whole thing. And in the meantime, have a terrific day.